So my name is Njororai Simiyu. Um, I'm professor and the chair of the Department of Allied Health Studies at Stephen F. Austin State University, Nacogdoches, East Texas, in the United States of America. And I am here to attend a symposium hosted by the Kenya University Sports Federation, geared towards elevating sports in Kenyan institutions of higher learning. And my presence here is to give an insight on how the Kenyan University Sports Federation can move their programs from where they are basically executed as welfare or recreational activities to a place where they can be elevated in terms of competitiveness and move closer to professionalization, because that's where the sports industry is going around the world, especially in institutions of higher learning. And looking at how sports has evolved to a level of highly commercialized industry in the United States is really a point of reference for Kenya University Sports Federation. In the US, we have the National Collegiate Athletics Association that has really elevated sports in that country to a point where it is a huge industry that is worth billions and billions of dollars. Yet in Kenya, we don't even have a monetary value attached to the value of the university sports brand in Kenya. So that's one area that we need to borrow directly, that how can we elevate our sports programs to a point where they can also be commercialized and have a brand that is attractive to sponsors and partners, and thereby have the athletes benefit from their talent, have institutions benefit from the sports industry, and overall just be in a position where, as institutions of higher learning, they can also produce teams that are competitive, even regionally, internationally, continentally, and also internationally. That is at FISO. So one of the other areas that I think is really lacking in our institutions is elevating KUSA functions and being visible to the public. I think from the interactions that I've had with many people from different industries, the media, among others, I think Kenyan University Sports is a hidden, it's a hidden treasure, in the sense that it is still so raw, and with a bit of application and a thought, we can have experts come around the table and come up with a formula where we can elevate this brand and expose it to the public, expose it even to their own students who are the primary consumers of that brand, and elevate it in a way that it can attract partners to come in and sponsor the activities in various universities. So visibility is an issue, and my request to the office holders in Kenya University Sports Federation is to partner with stakeholders from the media industry and have a deliberate discussion on how they can partner to elevate the sports brand in universities. Secondly, I think whenever they organize their events, they need to understand that even if they organize an event and people outside the institutions are not aware, then the impact of that particular event is limited. It can only be impactful nationally if they also partner with the stakeholders from the media industry as they are planning, and I encourage them to be very intentional in inviting very specific persons from the media industry that have expertise in different sports disciplines. Because unlike the other sports organizations, Kenyatta University Sports Federation has a variety of disciplines, and one person coming from the Standard or the Nation or KBC or Citizen may not be in a position to have the expertise to cover all those areas. But drawing people with different expertise, I think can help them elevate their brand. The other element is really that of just improving the administrative structures that can elevate the brand. And what I mean by administrative structures is changing the way institutions and the teams from different institutions, the way they are accredited by the national body. What I mean is that currently the mode is just for institutions to apply to be. They don't even apply. They just pay to be members. What we need to do is move away from just being paying to be members to a point where we introduce some measures for accreditation so that universities and their teams apply to be accredited, and they have to fulfill certain conditions for them to be accredited, so that we have certain standards that need to be met before a program is accredited, whether it is in rugby, whether it is in soccer, whether it is in track and field, because there are some universities that can compete at a higher level than others. And when you have such a mismatch in terms of the quality that is coming from each university, it doesn't enhance the quality and the competitiveness at the event. So it will make sense to have categories of institutions, categories of teams. Those who fulfill a certain criteria can be put in the top tier, and then those that don't measure up in the top tier can be put in tier 2, to a point where then we levelize the field according to the level of criteria that we have set for the different tiers. Because that's how the NCA is run. For example, in the NCA we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And the expectations and even the reward for the student athletes is different at those levels. And that's what we also need to introduce in our Kenyan sports ecosystem, so that when we put tiers, then we can package each level to make it more competitive and attractive to potential partners, including funding. I think if we can address some of these elements, then we can move our sports forward. And yes, in terms of performance, we need also to embrace technology. We need to embrace the new methods of training and tracking of performances. I think one of the things that is very critical is keeping records of performances for individual athletes as well as teams. As we stand now, we don't have really a historical track record of how our teams, how our institutions, how our individual athletes have performed over the years. So we need to introduce a centralized system where we can track individual athletes as well as teams in terms of their performances. And in terms of training for competitions, we need also to introduce elements of monitoring of performance both in training and a competition. So that, and because these technologies are now available in terms of wearable technologies that then can predict whether an athlete is in the best condition possible to compete at the highest level. So embracing technology and keeping data pertaining to the individual athletes as well as the teams will enhance the product that we put out there. Secondly, I think it is important also to note that because eligibility is such a big issue in Kenyan university sports, having centralized way of tracking athletes from the time they are enrolled in an institution of higher learning to throughout their eligibility years in the university, I'm sure that will help to eliminate this idea of mamlukism, or what in English therefore is mercenary athletes who are just hired to come in and compete. Because this will centralize ways of identifying who are the genuine athletes that should compete. And that is one area that, again, we need to improve on. So data keeping and tracking and monitoring is very critical to elevating our sports brand. And if we do that, then we can become competitive.
Thank you.
Thank you.